She kicked him out like trash without knowing he was worth millions. One minute, he was standing in the rain, suitcase in hand, heart in pieces, and the next, he was building an empire. She said he'd never be anything without her, that he was a nobody. What she didn't know was that the nobody she threw away would soon become the CEO of a company she'd end up begging for a job from. This isn't just about betrayal, it's about the revenge she never saw coming. The silent kind, the kind that doesn't need yelling or drama, just success. You think you've seen relationship drama? This story flips the script. It's about heartbreak, transformation, and the sweetest twist of fate. Stay with us, because by the end, you'll be asking yourself, what would you do if the person who broke you came crawling back? Get out, Marcus, just go. Jessica's voice echoed through the hallway, sharp and final. Her eyes burned with fury, arms crossed tight across her chest as if holding herself together. I'm done taking care of you. You're not my responsibility. Marcus stood at the doorway, suitcase in hand. The faded leather handle trembled slightly in his grasp. He didn't speak, not because he didn't have words, but because none of them would have mattered. Not now. The silence between them stretched, thick with all the things left unsaid. Jessica turned her back to him, blinking away hot tears. Her home, once filled with warmth and safety, now felt cold. She remembered him teaching her how to ride a bike, patching up scraped knees, staying up through fevers. But now all she saw was an old man taking up space, slowing down her life. You should have left years ago, she muttered, barely loud enough for him to hear. Marcus flinched, but still said nothing. His eyes, though, betrayed him, pools of sorrow that shimmered with something more than pain. A secret, a weight he'd carried long before today. He looked at her one last time, a quiet longing hidden behind the heartbreak. There was so much he could have told her, about the real reason he never asked for anything, about what he gave up to adopt her, about the fortune, hidden, protected, untouched, all in her name. But instead, he stepped outside. The door clicked shut behind him, and Jessica didn't watch him leave. She couldn't. Rage and guilt twisted inside her, but pride held her in place. She told herself it was the right thing, that she was finally free. She had no idea that with one broken goodbye, she had just set in motion a reckoning. And Marcus? He walked into the night with nothing but a suitcase and a plan. 23 years ago, the world broke for a little girl named Jessica. She was just 5 when the accident happened. A rainy night, a careless driver, and suddenly, her parents were gone. The media called it a tragedy. The family called it unfortunate. And when it came time to decide what to do with the orphaned girl, everyone looked away, except one man. Marcus was the family's driver, not a blood relative, not someone with money or status, just a quiet, middle-aged man with kind eyes and a worn-out uniform. But when no one else stepped forward, he did. I'll take her, he said softly, holding her trembling hand at the funeral. They said he was crazy, that a man with no family, no savings, and no real education couldn't raise a child. But Marcus didn't listen. He took Jessica home, to his tiny, one-bedroom apartment in a quiet corner of the city, and gave her everything. He gave her the master bedroom and slept on the pull-out couch. He picked up 2 more jobs, janitor by night, mechanic on weekends, just to cover her school fees. When she needed new textbooks, he sold his car, walking to work every day after that without complaint. Birthdays were always special, even if the gifts were small. He taught her to cook, to read with passion, to always say please and thank you. And most of all, he loved her. Not because he had to, because he chose to. He never spoke of the sacrifices, never reminded her of the nights he came home bone-tired, or the days he skipped meals so she could eat better. To her, he was simply Dad, and that was enough for him. As the years passed and Jessica grew, so did the distance between them. She wanted more space, more freedom, more life. And Marcus, quiet as always, let her go a little at a time. But deep down, He remembered everything, every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every promise he made to a little girl who'd lost the world and became his whole world in return. He raised her out of love.
At 28, Jessica had everything she thought she ever wanted. A corner office at one of LA's top law firms, designer clothes stacked in walk-in closets, and an engagement ring that sparkled almost as much as the Beverly Hills skyline outside her penthouse window. Her fiancé, Bradley Whitmore III, was wealthy, polished, and came from a long line of names that opened doors. She had reinvented herself, polished the edges, learned how to speak with just enough coldness to be respected. But in the shadows of her perfect life, there was Marcus. And she didn't talk about him. Not to friends, not to colleagues, not even to Bradley. When he did come up, like that awkward time Marcus showed up at her office unannounced, smiling with a paper bag of homemade cookies, Jessica dismissed him as an old family friend. She couldn't bear the questions, the pity. He didn't fit the image. "Jess, you can't keep letting him hang around," Bradley said one night, swirling a glass of red wine as they looked out over the city. "I mean, he's sweet, but let's be honest, he's not your real dad." Jessica said nothing, just stared into her drink. "You've worked too hard to let someone like him drag you down. It's time to move on, for both your sakes." She nodded, slowly, and that was the beginning of the end. Marcus became a ghost in her life, phone calls ignored, visits brushed off, birthday cards unopened. She told herself it was for the best, that she was protecting what she'd built. But the truth was uglier. She was ashamed of the man who had once given up everything for her. And the man she loved now, he made sure she never forgot that shame. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the driveway as Jessica stood with her arms crossed, her voice cold and clipped. "I need you to get your things out of the garage," she said without meeting Marcus's eyes. "Bradley wants to renovate it into a home gym. You can't just leave your junk here like this is still your house." Marcus looked at the garage, the one he'd built with his own hands 15 years ago, pouring cement in the heat, hammering beams by flashlight after work. Inside were boxes of old photos, faded Christmas decorations, and a small wooden train set he'd carved for Jessica's 8th birthday. "I'll get them," he said quietly. "And another thing," she added, her tone sharper. "Please don't come by my office again. It's not appropriate. You make things uncomfortable." He nodded once, not out of agreement, but understanding. That was all she saw now, a burden, an inconvenience, a past she wanted to erase. "I never meant to embarrass you," Marcus said softly. Jessica didn't reply. She turned and walked back inside, the door closing behind her with a dull thud. Marcus stood still for a long moment. He didn't cry. He didn't argue. He simply walked to the garage, gathered his things, the remnants of a lifetime of love and sacrifice, and packed them carefully into the back of his old pickup truck. No drama, no begging, just quiet heartbreak. He took one last look at the house he had turned into a home and the woman he had raised as his own. Then he drove away, not defeated, but changed. The viewers watched in silence, a lump rising in their throats. This wasn't just loss, it was dignity in the face of cruelty. And they knew, somehow, this wasn't the end. Not for Marcus. The worn wooden table in the corner of the small cafe was the same spot Marcus and Robert had met every Saturday for the past decade. The air smelled of fresh coffee and old books, a quiet refuge from the world outside. Robert, grinning over his steaming mug, leaned in. "So you really did it, huh? After all these years, you've been sitting on a gold mine." Marcus smiled softly, the lines around his eyes deepening. "Smart investments. Nothing flashy, just little things, stocks, bonds, some real estate tucked away. I kept it all low-key, hoping it'd grow slowly over time." Robert raised an eyebrow. "And you never told Jessica?" "No." Marcus shook his head. "I wanted to know if she'd love me without it, if she saw me as more than just a wallet or a stepping stone. It was never about the money." His voice caught, memories flooding in. Their years of working 3 jobs, of sleepless nights, of feeling invisible even when he was right there giving everything. But now, Marcus said, setting down his cup with newfound resolve, it's about more than just proving a point. It's about showing her, and maybe myself, that no matter what happens, a man's worth isn't measured by what he has, but by what he stands for. Robert nodded, respect clear in his eyes. So, what's the plan? Marcus leaned back, a calm fire burning in his gaze. The plan is to build something real. For myself, for Jessica, if she's ready to see the truth, and for anyone who's ever been thrown away but still believes in second chances. Sadness softened into quiet strength, pain folding into purpose. Marcus wasn't just a man with a suitcase anymore. He was a man ready to rewrite his story, and this time no one would ignore him. Marcus sat quietly in his modest living room, the weight of recent days pressing down on him. The pain of Jessica's rejection still lingered, but beneath it something new was stirring, a resolve sharper than ever before. He knew disappearing didn't have to mean fading away. With steady hands, Marcus picked up the phone and called the city's most respected financial firm. I want to set up a trust, he told them, manage my assets. But this isn't just for me, it's for the future. He laid out a plan that surprised even the experts. Scholarships for children who, like Jessica once was, had nowhere to turn. Community centers in neighborhoods overlooked by wealth, places where dreams could be nurtured without judgment or limits. A foundation built not on money alone, but on hope. Marcus didn't want a spotlight. He wanted impact. The man who had once been cast out now held the power to change lives, quietly, relentlessly, and on his own terms. And as the first donations began to roll out, the narrative shifted. Jessica wasn't the only one with the story. Marcus was no longer the broken father holding a suitcase in the rain. He was the architect of opportunity, a silent force rewriting the future for countless others. The viewers, once sympathetic only to his heartbreak, now saw the undeniable strength beneath. He had vanished from Jessica's world, but he hadn't disappeared. He was preparing for a comeback, and this time the world would watch him rise. The chandeliers sparkled like stars above the glittering crowd gathered in the grand ballroom of the Beverly Hills Country Club. Guests in designer gowns and tuxedos sipped champagne, exchanging polite smiles and whispered compliments. Among them, Jessica and Bradley moved effortlessly, the perfect power couple, radiant, confident, untouchable. Jessica glanced around, slightly uneasy. She'd agreed to come only because Bradley insisted, boasting about the charity event that would look great on her resume. Neither of them had any idea who was truly behind the gala. Backstage, Marcus stood quietly, his tailored suit sharp but humble. For years, he had stayed in the shadows, but tonight he was ready to step into the light. The MC's voice cut through the murmurs. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's event is made possible by a very special benefactor. Someone who believes that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we lived. A hush fell over the room. And now please welcome Marcus Bennett. The crowd erupted into polite applause. Jessica's heart stopped. She scanned the stage in disbelief. That quiet, worn man from her past, standing tall and composed, was the very man she had cast out. Marcus's voice was calm but charged with emotion as he began. 23 years ago, I took in a little girl with nothing but a broken heart and a suitcase full of fire. I gave her everything I had, not because I was wealthy, but because love doesn't keep score. He looked directly at Jessica, eyes steady and unwavering. I never told her about the fortune I quietly built. I wanted to see if she'd love me for who I was, not what I had. She didn't. The room fell silent. But tonight I stand here not as a rejected father, but as a man who believes in second chances. This foundation will help children who feel forgotten, because real wealth is in kindness, loyalty, and the courage to forgive. Jessica's face went pale. Bradley squeezed her hand, stunned. The weight of betrayal, pride, and regret hung heavy in the air. Jessica realized too late that the man she had thrown away was the one holding the power, and the key to her own redemption. The morning after the gala, the world woke up to a storm. Photos of Marcus on stage delivering that unforgettable speech flooded social media. Videos went viral, comments pouring in, admiration for Marcus's grace, and sharp criticism aimed at Jessica and Bradley. Headlines screamed, "Rejected father becomes millionaire philanthropist. Daughter shamed." The fall of Beverly Hills power couple. Jessica's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from friends, colleagues, even strangers. Some sympathetic, many judgmental. Her law firm wasted no time. A terse email from HR informed her that due to recent events and public scrutiny, she would be placed on indefinite leave pending review. Bradley's world crumbled even faster. The next morning, his father, chairman of the family's investment firm, called him into the office. The conversation was brutal but brief. Bradley was fired. No explanations, no second chances. Their carefully constructed lives, built on appearances and social climbing, were unraveling thread by thread. In private moments, Jessica stared at the ceiling, haunted by Marcus's words and the cold truth of her own arrogance. Bradley, once so confident, was now a shadow of the man who urged her to cut ties. They had thought power and wealth would protect them. Instead, it exposed every weakness. And the public watched eagerly as the empire they'd built began to crumble, a cautionary tale of pride, betrayal, and the price of ignoring true love. Jessica sat on the worn couch of her modest apartment, the glow of the city lights filtering through the blinds. The silence around her was heavy, a stark contrast to the life she once knew. No luxury cars, no designer clothes, no invitations to exclusive parties. She was broke, alone, stripped of everything except time and the weight of regret. Her mind replayed Marcus's speech, the pain in his eyes, the dignity he never lost. For years she had pushed him away, blinded by shame and the need to fit in. Now with nothing left, she finally saw the truth. Her phone rang, startling her. "Jessica." Marcus's voice was calm, steady. "I want to offer you a job at the foundation. No special treatment. Just an opportunity to help, to start over." She hesitated, swallowing the lump in her throat. Pride whispered no, but something deeper. Hope urged yes. When she arrived at the community center for her first day, a small boy tugged at her sleeve. His eyes were wide, filled with dreams and fears. She recognized all too well. He reminded her of herself at 5, lost, scared, desperate for someone to believe in her. As she helped him with his homework, Jessica felt something shift. The anger, the pain, the bitterness began to soften. This wasn't about money or status. It was about love, about the sacrifices Marcus made silently, about the second chance she was being handed. For the first time in years, Jessica wasn't afraid to ask for forgiveness from Marcus, from herself, and from the future waiting to be rebuilt. Days turned into weeks, and slowly Jessica began to rebuild what she had so carelessly broken. Every task at the foundation, every smile she helped create, chipped away at the walls she had built around her heart. Marcus watched quietly from a distance, cautious but hopeful. He saw the genuine effort, the humility in her eyes, and the way she stayed late to tutor kids who reminded her of her own past. Trust, once shattered, isn't easily repaired, but Marcus was willing to try. One afternoon, as they sorted through donations together, Jessica paused and looked at him with tears brimming. "Dad," she whispered, the word heavy, with years of regret and newfound love. Marcus smiled, a simple, quiet smile full of pride and forgiveness. That moment marked a turning point. Jessica's life shifted from chasing superficial success to embracing purpose. The pain of rejection transformed into passion for helping others find their way, just as Marcus had helped her. She found meaning not in wealth or status, but in the bonds she was repairing and the lives she was touching. Healing was no longer a distant dream. It was happening, one day at a time. Together, they were more than father and daughter. They were a team united by love, resilience, and the courage to start over. Never judge someone by what they seem to have, because their heart may be richer than their bank account. Marcus's story reminds us that true wealth isn't about money or status, but about love, sacrifice, and the strength to rise again when life knocks you down. Have you ever been underestimated or mistreated? Maybe someone wrote you off before truly seeing who you are. Share your story in the comments below. We want to hear from you. If you believe in second chances, hidden strength, and the power of redemption, subscribe to our channel. We bring you real stories that inspire hope, courage, and the belief that it's never too late to rewrite your own destiny. Hit that subscribe button and join our community, because everyone deserves a chance to rise.